Good morning, everyone. So, witchcraft. When that word is said, a lot of people think of this woman from the Wizard of Oz, gangly, wearing black, riding on a broom with warts or green skin. Or when you think of the word magic, you think of wizards, white wispy beards like Gandalf the Grey. Or here in America, we have the Salem witch trials, where 20 people were persecuted of being witches and killed. Well, me being a Wiccan myself, I thought it would be a wise idea to do something like this just to kind of dispel some of the oddities that are still around today. There is a lot of more acceptance in today's standards, like, crystals, crystal water, all that. However, like I said, there's still a lot of misconceptions, and, well, I would like to dispel them. So, what it really is. So, to start off, what exactly is witchcraft, and, well, how many forms are there of it? Well, there were three definitions I found. The first one was from a Christian Bible, the King James Version, actually, the same ones they used to persecute witches for so many years. They defined it as the practice of witches, sorcery, enchantments, and convening and having sex with the devil. That is how they defined it. Cambridge.org, they stated it as the use of magic, especially in stories, for either harming or helping others. Now, the third option I had was from a book called The Witches Book. It was a collection of it was an encyclopedia of different definitions, all that. They defined it as, it was linked to wisdom. It had the root meaning of wit and to know. It is an ancient pagan religion that they defined as something as a reverence for female and male deities, peace, fertility. That is what they promoted. Now, what kinds of witchcraft are there? Well, when you think of witchcraft, you think of voodoo or shamans. So like African witchcraft, you have Native American spiritualism, which would be considered a form of witchcraft. You have the Norse, the Germanic people, the Anglo-Saxons. There's hundreds of types. More than I could put in this tiny speech here. Now, each side of magic will have a light and a dark side. So, what exactly is white magic and dark magic? Well, white magic is the peaceful kind. It's gentle, it's, how do I say this? It's very kind. It's only promoting good emotions, so whenever you feel happy, that would be considered to be like a good emotion or good energy. Now, of course, with these, it's no spell work that promotes demons. That's black magic, and I'll cover that in a minute. White magic encompasses, like, protection, certain spells, stuff like that. It's very gentle. Now, opposed to black magic is the polar opposite. Has a lot of, evil intention, the kind of situation where you think of summoning with demons. It's considered the left-hand path, and ironically, a Wiccan cannot use black magic. No witch can. If you use black magic, you are considered a dark magician. So, with that out of the way, what are kind of some of the misconceptions about witchcraft? Well, first off, a lot of people believe, or see movies, oh, witches are super vengeful. No, they're quite peaceful. Turn the other cheek, like a lot of Christian people are, actually. And anyone with a vengeful intention would be considered a dark magician. So, another misconception that they had is like the idea of witches belong to Satan. Satanism, there's a difference between Wicca and Satanism. Satanism was ironically a product of Christianity. The best way to describe it was they wanted to rebel against the idea of Christianity, so they reverenced the Antichrist. And they're very unorganized, kind of more erratic, as opposed to Wicca, who has been around for thousands of years. It's more formal, organized. Like I said earlier, they are relatively peaceful. In fact, they do not revere Satan in the slightest. A lot of them actually disregard it. Disregard Satan as just pretty much what a fairy tale to them. So, where did that confusion stem from? Well, whenever a witch trial would happen, so like in Salem, when a witch trial would happen, they would refer to their god, whether it be peaceful or malevolent, the Christian writer, the chronicler would write down the word devil in the chronicles because they believed they were one and the same. Like I said, it didn't matter if it was peaceful or malevolent. So, and of course, after the trial, or even before the trial, some people would be accused of it. They would actually be put to the test. Now, a couple of the tests would be like the witch's teat or the witch's mark, which would be a large obscene birthmark for the witch's mark, and the witch's teat would be something like a mole or a large skin tag, and they believed that would be where a demon would suck the blood out of you. So say if you had a mole on your neck, it'd be like that. Well, another way that after the trial and everything like that, or even before that trial, they would actually mainly do this. They would tie up a woman or a man by their hands and feet and throw them into the river. If they swam, they're a witch. If they didn't, they're not a witch. Oh well, let God decide their fate. Actually, one famous example, her name was Grace Sherwood. She was accused of being a witch, was thrown into the river, she swam. However, instead of being killed, she actually was thrown in jail for only 8 years. And that was odd, especially coming from History.com, which has kind of a reverence for, or not a reverence, a kind of notorious pays for kind of painting witches in a bad light. But on to that. The witch, like I said, the witch's mark earlier, well, not only would it be kind of a symbol of a demon you made a pact with, a lot of people considered familiars as demons. Now, what is a familiar? A familiar is a spiritual or physical attendant. So they can take the form of a wolf, a bear, a snake, sometimes you see a rat or a spider. Now, during witch hunts, they would actually look out for this. So if, say, you were too familiar with a dog, I mean, be all cutesy with Fluffy and all that, and they would say, oh, hey, she's a witch. Oh, no. Or say, you have an animal running in after you, or not after you, towards you. They would say, hey, this is a witch, this has to be a witch, let's try her. Now, ironically, in this day and age, a lot of witches do not have familiars. It's just kind of a concept that kind of became common. And even if they did, some don't even have physical attendants. They have, like I said, a spiritual attendant. Now, a way you can contact a spiritual attendant is through binding. For example, say if I wanted to connect to a familiar, I would use a binding spell and trap the familiar's soul within an object, so for example a crystal skull. And you would use that in your spells to help aid you. Another one that you kind of see with witches is the grimoire, or a book. You just see a book they're holding. Normally it's a big binding thing. Now, they were ironically a more recent invention. With all those witch hunts, witchcraft was originally a completely oral tradition. Of course, whittling down the numbers, they got scared, and so they transferred over to books. This is my own personal grimoire, and you can write down really anything you want. It's just pretty much a glorified journal. There's many types of grimoires. There's your common one, which you would share with your coven, a family, which you would hear with families, your own personal one, and many, 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 many more types. For example, the Book of Shadows, which a lot of people think is more of a demonic thing. It's more of it's a collection of 20th century witchcraft and wisdom. It only holds white magic within it. If you wanted something like dark magic, you would actually want to look at some books made by Aleister Crowley. Now, Aleister Crowley was a British occultist and writer. Considered himself the B66. Yes, that is his actual name that he considered himself. He was not very well known in life, but became revered in death. I'm not sure if you heard the Beatles, they made a song after him, actually. So within his life, he joined the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. It was a secret society that was dedicated to metaphysics, occultism, and paranormal activity. Now, this cult was strewn with black magic. He started his own order in 1907 called with the Latin initials for Silver Star. Once again, with the transfer over from dark magic, he pretty much made another cult with dark magic within it. Later on in his life, he moved to Italy, specifically, I believe it was Sicily, and he resided there until about 1923, where supposedly a spell, or should I say a ritual, went wrong, and one of his assistants died. The Italian government caught wind of this. They looked at him, said, "You're out of here, you're annexed." So they sent him back to Britain, and the British government, after hearing of this, the newspapers considered him the wickedest man alive. So with that kind of there, is witchcraft really a thing? Depends on who you're talking to. Like I said with Aleister Crowley, he believed in it. Personally, I believe in it. But a lot of people actually, when they think of witchcraft, they think of voodoo. Now, is voodoo a real thing? Yes. Practice, yes. Is the deaths by it? Also yes. In the sense, by an article I read called Voodoo Death by Barbara Nigel, who has a PhD in psychology, he said, technically, yes, there is, but it's not exactly from the curse. It is actually from psychosomatic death. Now, what is psychosomatic death? It's keeling over from intense fear. It's death from intense fear, yeah. And, of course, it doesn't happen specifically in voodoo. People can die in hospitals from psychosomatic death. So, conclusively, by the actual practice of black magic itself, no, people do not die from that. It's actually the stigma. They die from the fear. Now, another question that was actually asked to me was by a friend of mine who said, when you're doing a spell, can it get wrong and go out of hand? White magic, like I said, pure intentions, no, it cannot. Black magic, definitely. If you do not have the correct materials, if you do not do it the correct day or date, cycle the moon, there's a lot of factors going in it. The materials majorly actually value it. If you chant the wrong thing, yes, it can go wrong. So what are some ways to protect yourself? Well, one of the first ways is actually through using protection circles or warding, which is using a certain spell that you have written on yourself to protect yourself from demons. Another way is like having salt, holy water, yes. Witches do use holy water from time to time. And many other safeguards like needles and iron nails. So another way that they actually, use protection is through herbs. So certain herbs, what are good ones to actually have on standby? So it's really up to personal preference. Me personally, I would have cinnamon, sage, rosemary, devil's claw, cedar, pine, rose, and nettle, and hot peppers, actually, like jalapenos and habaneros. They all have their different uses. So some examples of their uses are like, for protection, you would use cinnamon and cedar. But if you wanted to banish something, you would actually use devil's claw, which when it's dried up, it kind of has this scraggly look of a claw, like the devil. So for like cleansing and purification for the grounds or for your own home, you would actually use sage, which you see a lot of Native American people use, or lavender. Lavender is also another good cleanser. So for good health and healing though, you want to promote your health, say you're sick, pine tea, if you've ever had that before, it has a high amount of vitamin C within it. Wiccans do use it quite a bit. Another one is actually peppermint. Because, who doesn't like a candy cane every once in a while? So, honestly, in witchcraft, being known as Wicca within the modern day it's more accepted, but it's still grossly misunderstood. I personally hope I could have went way more in detail within this, and we could have been here for hours. However, hopefully this was a good introductory course to you, and hopefully you know a little bit more about witchcraft. Thank you.